The next speaker is Monica Luengo. She's from ICOMOS, Spain, and she is an art historian and a landscape architect. She's the former director of the Master Course on Cultural and Natural Heritage at Andalusia International University. Her field of expertise is linked to the theory and practice in the research and restoration, conservation, and management of cultural landscapes. She's the former president of the International Scientific Committee on Cultural Landscapes, ICOMOS IFLA. She has also carried out desk reviews, World Heritage nominations, World Heritage evaluation missions, upstream process, advisory missions, and also participated in expert meetings in the World Heritage panel for 2 years. She has also worked as a consultant for several World Heritage nominations and as an expert for the Spanish Ministry of Culture in relation to World Heritage issues. During the past 15 years, she has also organized seminars, exhibitions, and has lectured internationally, particularly on cultural landscapes. Monica will be presenting World Heritage evaluation missions.
So, buenos días, Buenos Aires. You see, I have done many things, but I was not able to open a water bottle. So, but well. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this session. I'm really here. I feel I'm representing all the hundreds of experts that for during many, many years have worked in ICOMOS missions, and sometimes I can tell you they are not easy, although usually they are a wonderful experience. So first of all, can we go in? You know that the main purpose of a mission is to focus on those aspects that might be not well included in the nomination dossier, or even if they are well, you have to know the site. So I feel that mission experts are a bit like ICOMOS eyes and ICOMOS ears and sometimes ICOMOS taste on site. And the objective of the mission is to assess on the conditions of integrity and authenticity, the state of conservation, the adequacy of boundaries, the factors affecting, and the protection and management systems. Fortunately, and I must say we don't have to assess OUV, which I found is the most difficult issue of a whole dossier. Please. So usually always, missions are carried out by experts who are not of the country and are not involved in the nomination. And those experts are selected by ICOMOS on the basis of their understanding and their expertise. I sincerely don't know, for example, why I was selected the first time I did a mission. And I don't know very well who selects the experts going on mission. But I can imagine there's a file of people who are experts on the different type of property that's being nominated. And what the mission expects is that the professionals, is your opinion to what extent the nominated property, not the nomination dossier, fulfills the requirements of the World Heritage Convention, please. So, first time, don't panic, because you receive a letter. Do you want to do? And say, I've never done one. So, be calm, stay calm. And then you are receiving a nice invitation letter with the ICOMOS World Heritage Policy Paper, the ICOMOS World Heritage Guidelines for ICOMOS missions, a format mission report, and the letter of acceptance that you have to sign if you accept to go. I would encourage you only to accept missions that you are sure you are able, or at least you think you are able to assess thanks to your experience. Many people have put lots of work in a nomination. It's a lot of involvement of the work of people on solutions, and it should be taken seriously. No, so, hi, a mission. No. So these are the documents, some of the documents you receive. Continue. So if you accept, you have to sign it. You see, it's quite simple before you realize where you're being. And then you sign the ICOMOS policy paper. It's quite easy. It's about confidentiality. It's the main issues of behavior. Do you see that you have to? And then you will receive the dossier of denominated property, the further details on the contacts of the state party, the format mission report, examples of other technical missions that might be similar, and notes on specific issues to be raised during the mission. It might be possible that perhaps the advisor or ICOMOS World Heritage Unit has already seen perhaps some problems or some special issues that they want specially to be assessed during the mission. So in this sense, it's very helpful. And the format mission report, I won't go through all the points, but you see it's most of them tangible aspects, so not the OUV, but integrity and authenticity. Well, no, that's not very tangible, but factors, the boundaries, the protection, the management, the visitors and tourism, interpretation, and the knowledge, and the annexes that you have to send. That's the program of the mission and the name of individuals, and any other annex that you think might be useful to the better understanding of the nomination. So during the whole process, you'll receive an excellent support by the evaluation unit in Paris. Both, I'm sorry, Marie-Laure, I didn't find an image where you were. This was the only one I found, but all the team there is willing to help you in any detail with your travel, with the nomination, with your communication to the state party. It's really wonderful to know, and sometimes travels, for example, are not easy, and you have that support in Paris that's really absolutely wonderful before, during, and after the mission. So we'll go on. Then work begins, and what do you have, or at least I'll tell you what I do. I received the nomination dossier. You have to study it very, very carefully because you have to get on site with it already soaked. Do you say soaked? With the nomination. It's very useful to study other similar dossiers of properties already inscribed, to see also some of the ICOMOS recommendations done for those properties inscribed, because usually they are pointing out issues that might be also in the nomination you are dealing with. And then it's also, well, I'm a bit, how you say, I gossip, and I go into Google and see if there's something happening on the site, if there are news, how's the country, political situation, where it is. And that sometimes gives you a lot of input. Then you must check carefully the program. The program is usually sent by the state party with full of meeting with the authorities, the ministers, the governors, blah, blah, etc., etc. It's much more useful if you have a program with the real stakeholders, with the people on site, with the local population, with the experts that are working there. Of course, you must also receive some formal invitations that are inevitable, but it's so you can change and make suggestions about changing the program if you wish to. And I must say, all state parties, at least what I have done, those I've done, are absolutely willing to help you and to change anything that you want. Then you have to, if the nomination perhaps is more complicated, you have other issues like the resource manuals, the manual on preparing World Heritage nomination, thematic studies, and the ICOMOS documentation center, which is also very useful and has lots of information. So on site, once you are there, you arrive, what to do? Take notes, notes. Well, I'm old-fashioned, and I take notes. I've seen some experts in missions that record with their phones, and I thought, oh, how intelligent. But take note or record or whatever. You'll see so many things and you'll receive so many inputs in such a short time. It's absolutely impossible to remember everything. So write, note, record anything. Take pictures of everything you think you are going to remember, and when you also, when afterwards you see the pictures, there's also much other information. Ask, ask, ask. There's a team willing to help you and to make you know the slightest detail. So profit of that and ask anything you want. And I've also noticed that if you ask and you are interested in the subject, they are very pleased. I mean, it's much nicer to go to a place, not to pass an exam for them, because you get there to be soaked with the nomination and to be able to transmit all the issues you've been asked to the panel as to take a decision. So be kind, enjoy, and have a good time, and you'll get much better results than if you are like doing an exam. Request any additional information you might think. They are also willing to give it, so ask for any additional information. But always remember you are representing ICOMOS. As I've said, you are the ears and eyes of ICOMOS, and you must behave. So remember that also. Remember, you are only a very small part. People think, the state party usually thinks that you are the part, the important part, the mission, because it's the only person perhaps they are seeing. After they will see the panel members, but it's the only, you are the only member that they are seeing. So for them, it's you passing an exam. But please remind them that you are a small part of a whole process. Find the time during the mission to review your notes. That's an advice. I don't know if I'm getting old and I forget things, but you see so many things, you speak with so many people that at the end of the day, you don't have a small time to put in order all those things that you have seen, and to think a bit if you should ask again on some issue. Do it, because you'll return back home after 3, 4, 5 days or a week, and it will be a mess from my point of view. So it's good if you have time to make them again and to prepare the next day. And remember that you must never, never, never do any recommendations that may impact on the definition of the property. You are there just to speak. Perhaps sometimes your questions might suggest them that there's need for additional information, even if you don't ask for it. But remember, you are not there. As you have seen the process, the final ICOMOS recommendation is after many, many, many steps. So don't try to make them or to suggest the final recommendation of ICOMOS. Please. What are the main problems I found? Empathy with the team. You are living tightly closed with a wonderful team of persons that, of course, are very kind with you, and they are showing you the best, and they love the place, and it's so difficult not to have some empathy with them. You have wonderful moments that you share with them, and as you see, we are all smiling because we are enjoying. Another problem is that the programs are very tight. We have a very tight schedule, and you have many times to rush from one place to another, and you don't really. So my suggestion is also at least one day. At least one day, take 10, 15 minutes to sit and breathe the spirit of the place and feel it a bit. Not always, fundamentally for cultural landscapes, it's not the best time of the year to visit, for example, an agricultural landscape where the crop has already been taken. So it's not the nicest place. So try to imagine it in all sorts of seasons, but this is very much for cultural landscapes. So enjoy, so just one back, can we go back? So the lack of, please avoid contact with media. You're going to get in troubles if not. And don't comment anything of the result of the mission. And please. So this is some images of missions I've done. I must say, well, I'll add it in the answers. So enjoy. It's an excellent opportunity to work for ICOMOS, to work for the convention, to help safeguarding some heritage and to help the community. So when you are doing the report, summarize, make clear your recommendations for the panel, be clear and scientific, and try to avoid any comments that might be personal, but add anything you must be useful. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Those are wonderful tips that we've heard. The next speaker will be Bettina Adams from ICOMOS Brazil. Yeah? She's an architect and an urbanist with a master's degree in geography. She has worked for the Florianopolis Municipal Urban Planning Institute for 39 years. She's a member of several international scientific committees. She now serves as the vice president for cultural landscapes and also does consultancy work for UNESCO and ICOMOS. She is a counselor of the Santa Catarina State Council for Culture and formerly acted at the federal, state, and municipal levels. She received medals in her book on urban preservation, particularly with regards to the municipal processes. She's a member of the Historical and Geographical Institute and Conservation and Restoration Association and gives support to the public ministry, NGOs, and Public Heritage's Office on defense issues. Bettina will be talking about reactive monitoring missions.
It's a great honor to be here and share my experience. And it was incredible that Monica's presentation is really very complementary to my presentation. So thank you very much, Monica. OV is the most important aspect to be observed in a World Heritage property. It defines the values and the qualities that justifies its inscription on the World Heritage List. This is the focus that a monitoring mission has to observe. When there is a serious threat on the OV, the World Heritage Committee can consider to place the property on the list of World Heritage in danger. This is a concrete step taken by the committee. It is a signal, it is a warning that the state party should take urgent measures to repair damages on the property. If nevertheless the OV is destroyed, the committee can consider deleting the property from the list. This photo regards a property church of Chile, composed of 16 churches, mostly very small wooden architecture located on several islands of the archipelago. They were built within a framework of circular missions of the 17th century. The missionaries traveled around, but their headquarters was located in Castro. As shown on this photo, Castro is set upon a plateau. The geographic condition increased the importance of the headquarters setting. The churches were only assessed by sea, so the towers were intended to be seen by navigators. The shopping mall competes with the church, and it's a great deal bigger. It distracted the church's predominant relation within its surroundings. It deeply affects the property's OV. There is another important aspect that was not stated in the OV and that we saw in our mission. That's another thing that had to be done, because for its history, Chile extrapolates the local dimension. Castro was one of the first cities founded in Chile in 1567, and for some time was the most southern city of the Americas. Therefore, it was the departure point for the evangelization routes regarding the whole southern edge of the America. So Castro is very important and a very symbolic place. So the ICOMOS missions are an opportunity. They also represent an updated point of view of foreign experts with different approaches and contributions. So this could be used as an opportunity to complement some forgotten or not sufficiently detailed values of the property. The monitoring of any heritage site is essential. Reported problems can result in ICOMOS joint ICOMOS joint UNESCO missions to the site. Sometimes we go alone, and sometimes we make missions with World Heritage. It is very important to have practical monitoring experience and know how the administrative processes function. The advisory mission are voluntarily asked by the state party to provide an expert advice on specific matters such as assessment on conservation issues, evaluation on the impact of a major development project on the OV. There, in this case, we observed a lack of heritage impact assessment expertise on the site. That's a problem that has to be addressed. It could be proposals for master plan, management plan, traffic issues, or others. The master plan, especially, has always a great complexity and can be a challenge due the short time of the mission's presence on the site. Inadequate parameters can cause huge negative impact on the OV. Eventually, a small but powerful aspect can be overviewed and result in a problematic UNESCO's endorsement. And that's an important point. Progress on mitigation measures that formerly were indicated and preventive mission asked by the state party sometimes before the committee asks for a reactive monitoring mission that always is a bit more serious. This type of missions can eventually be asked pro forma. It can happen that it do not necessarily express the real will of the government to give adequate solution. It can be only a kind of show-off, and then you have really a problem in the site how to manage things, because they don't take you to the places you really need to go, and there can occur problems. But people always are very, very nice to you. That's the thing. They only say to, no, let's drink something, let's eat a biscuit. Oh no, it's hot, it's cold, things like that. The reactive monitoring missions are requested by the committee when the property is under threat. The mission has to observe the committee's decision, consider the danger, and evaluate the feasibility of ensuring the OV. The mission has to analyze or can suggest corrective measures. Next. A mission is a diplomatic issue. UNESCO can only make recommendations. The state party has the responsibility and decision regarding the site. The mission's report is peer-reviewed by ICOMOS and sent to UNESCO. Generally, these reports are posted on UNESCO's website, very easily available. Afterwards, the expert may be asked to make follow-ups. Often there are lots of follow-ups that you have to attend. Basically here, see and ask. Do not give statements. Be open-minded. Speak with those in favor, those against. Ask on the site asked in loco for opinions, also for documents, press release. Afterwards, it may be difficult to obtain these. Explore the site by yourself. And a great help are the assessment of local ICOMOS expert. I think ICOMOS of the country, Comité National, is very, very important to be together with the mission because they can give an insight, very important insight. Involvement of the local technical team. That can be a very fruitful and interesting debate. Involvement of the administration in charge. Political will is always fundamental to get things going on and solved. Protection of the visual aspects is an instrument to be implemented. The mission can identify the necessity to increase the protection of the old way. World Heritage properties are living sites. Situations that were adequate can become threats. Visual and environmental connection with the properties have to be recognized, preserved, and protected. This matter is beyond the buffer zones. The image shows Cusco, Plaza de Armas, the heart of the Inca Empire. Till today, it maintains its visual dominance over the valley and is surrounded by its magnificent sacred mountains. This can be lost because the dimension of the existing buffer zones doesn't guarantee that. So how to guarantee this? It's to consider to create a new instrument. For instance, define an attribute linked to the OV, for instance, the visual protection of the surrounding mountains as can be seen from Plaza de Armas. In response, the state party has to observe that its master plan will guarantee the control of heights in order to maintain this visibility, considering a certain point, for instance, Plaza de Armas. Next one. Last one. I end with the photo of Lima, founded 1535 by Pizarro. There was identified that although it was located on very old pre-Columbian settlements, none of these evidence are recognized within the World Heritage Site. It was asked to broaden the perimeter of the property in order to include elements of the former reduction of Santiago Apostol del Cercado, place where the indigenous inhabitants were spatially confined. Recent research identified that the urban structure of the Cercado was oriented to the sacred Inca spaces. There is the proposal to include these elements, that's the church, the rhomboid square, that is totally different from Lima's urban traces, and the former school of the princes.
Example. The last speaker is, before we go to the panel discussion, is Christophe Rivet from ICOMOS Canada. He has been working in heritage conservation as an archaeologist, planner, and policy advisor. He has worked for many years for Parks Canada, leading multidisciplinary projects at national historic sites and national parks and developing conservation standards for archaeological sites. He also worked for the Environment Canada, where he's responsible for building relations with provincial governments, NGOs, academia, and industry for the department in Atlantic Canada. Christophe has extensive hands-on experience working with communities, various levels of government, and First Nation. Since 2015, he has been running his own consultancy firm, Cultural Spaces Consulting. As a practitioner, he has been actively involved in World Heritage matters, leading a successful nomination proposal in Canada and advising on projects in Canada, Belgium, the Netherlands, and the United Kingdom. He has been president of ICOMOS Canada since 2015 and contributed to the transformation of the organization to focus cultural landscapes, indigenous heritage, and climate change. Christophe will be presenting ICOMOS national committees in the World Heritage scenario.
Thank you very much. Buenos dias, bonjour à tous, good morning. It is, well, I'm very grateful for ICOMOS Argentina for hosting us. This is an exceptional opportunity for myself as a representative of a Committee of the Americas to meet with my colleagues here. And I'm also grateful to Clara for inviting me to speak about the National Committee perspective, because it is one of those components of the process that's not quite as clear as could be. So what I'll do, I'll give you a bit of the role, a bit of an overview of the role of the national committees as articulated in the statutes and the policies. I'll also illustrate a bit of the mechanism, and I'll share with you the example of ICOMOS Canada's role over the years, some of the challenges that we've experienced, and I'll end with a few considerations which I think should be an interesting starting point for a conversation in the panel. So just to highlight, which you've already seen this morning, the World Heritage Program considers three big components: the preparation of a nomination, the evaluation, and the condition and monitoring. So what I'll discuss throughout my presentation is how national committees can or should or would or may interact with one or more of these three components. So in the statutes, there's no specific mention of a role for national committees with World Heritage. But in fact, I think it's important to remember these two statements that are taken from there, that the aim of the committee is to promote the conservation, protection, rehabilitation, and enhancement of monuments, groups, and buildings and sites at the national and international level. So this is ICOMOS. And the national committees represent ICOMOS's interest at the national level and their members' views within the international network. And that's really the crux of our existence as a national committee. In terms of policies, there's no specific policy, to my knowledge, that articulates a role for national committees in this process. But the operational guidelines for the implementation of the World Heritage Convention stresses this connection between local realities, international perspectives, and this necessity to always have this pulse on the reality of the ground. So the current mechanism, in terms of the preparation, this is left to the state party, and they may reach out to the Secretariat with a need for help. And in that circumstance, there's no real obligation to involve the National Committee. In terms of the World Heritage evaluations, these are based on a two-step review, as we've seen, the desk review and the site evaluation. In terms of the desk review, there's often a call for expertise directly to national committees, and usually those do not relate specifically to the sites, but what we're looking for in that particular call is really a expertise in the subject matter. There is also an opportunity to comment on the information and to provide some general perspective. In terms of the site evaluation, there's an opportunity to meet and interact with the evaluator, which is quite an important opportunity if national committees are able to seize it. Now, this is not done quite systematically, but it is offered systematically, and my tone has just changed. So the thing that needs to be really quite well appreciated is that there is no involvement in the deliberations or in the interaction between the Secretariat and the state parties. So this is particularly important in the context of being sensitive to the different relationships that need to be maintained in that process. And in terms of the monitoring, we often are called upon to offer perspective on condition and pressures on World Heritage sites, and we can provide reports. These sometimes are stemmed by stakeholder requests to appeal to ICOMOS, in which case the National Committee may serve as a conduit. So a few examples from ICOMOS Canada. In the past decade, Canada submitted 5 sites for inscription, condition reports, and a new tentative list. In that context, ICOMOS Canada set up a World Heritage Advisory Committee to the board, and that's to our board, the board of directors. And the point of that advisory committee is to help with the recommendations from knowledgeable experts in World Heritage. So it is understood in our national committee that the board of directors is the authority to speak on behalf of the organization. But what we do need is to tap into the network of professionals that are part of our membership to advise us appropriately. And in terms of the World Heritage body of experts, we are fortunate enough that Canadians have participated for many, many years since 1975 in World Heritage aspects of the program. So we can tap into a quite solid body of professionals. So in that context, again, ICOMOS Canada contributed to the preparation aspect. So we provided training in OUV for the tentative list, for the candidate sites to the tentative list. This was completely independent from the state party. We had an agreement with the state party that we would not get involved in the evaluation to prepare the tentative list, but that we would provide support to all the sites that are interested in becoming candidates on the tentative list to understand the aspects of OUV. In terms of the evaluation, we have interacted with evaluators. We have provided written comments on legislation, management, and other aspects. So we have had this kind of constant effort. And in terms of condition and monitoring, we've provided input to assessments for at least 3 World Heritage Sites in Canada. And this is an exercise that we continue to do, and it's a written exercise, usually. So some of the challenges. So with the state party, the objective is to best inform the work to implement the convention. So the national committees are the face of the organization with national authorities. This is really, really important to appreciate, is that we really are the ones on a constant basis carrying the name of ICOMOS in our country. So as a result, we have that relationship, and there's an expectation of guidance and access to the international context. And that's the hope that state parties have by having a relationship with the national committees. The expectations is to convey national reality, which comes with significant risks, a risk of lobbying and a risk of undue influence. Now, I'm quite grateful to my state party to be very respectful of the rules, so we haven't really experienced that. But it is a reality of many national committees, and we really have to walk that fine line of conveying important information to the organization internationally on the reality of our countries, respective countries, and not play the role of surrogate for the state party. And there's also the expectation that we would help with the success and the solutions towards that success. And that's because we are expected to have a good knowledge of the process, to be able to interpret the guidance, including the guidance in les orientations, the guidelines. Yes, thank you. And we are also hopefully expected to mediate different perspectives. So with the Secretariat, the objective is to best inform the recommendations. And this is where we also have a duty, a responsibility. And that's where things can be a little trickier because there is, in fact, a lack of clarity in establishing that relationship. National committees cannot be a third party to the discussions, but what is our role in that process? There is increasing discussion around the upstream process, which is an opportunity for state parties to tap into the ICOMOS body of expertise to help prepare nominations or help assess the potential of certain orientations in preparing the nominations. But what is the role of the national committees in that context? There's an expectation to represent faithfully the perspective to deliver on cultural diversity, which is a particularly significant point to appreciate when national committees do aim to represent the different cultures that form the human history. How can we facilitate that understanding of the nuances tied to that cultural diversity? And I think fundamentally it's a matter of having a strong understanding of the authenticity tied to these sites. And there's also this matter of informing the work of the World Heritage Banner on the implementation of legislation and policies in particular. So usually we are a body of professionals that work with these legislations and policies. So we are I would say, a recommendable source of information in understanding those. And the cultural perspective, as I mentioned earlier. So this is where there's a usefulness in establishing the credibility and accuracy of the content of the evaluation. So some elements for your consideration. To establish a relationship and responsibility between national committees and the World Heritage Panel, there's perhaps a consideration to be had on increasing, improving, or even establishing communication and due process for inclusion of national committee perspectives. National committees often have a relationship with national authorities, and as I mentioned, it can be quite delicate to maneuver that, but how does the organization take advantage of that? And this is the organization as a whole. The role of the national committee is implementing the convention needs to be clarified. So we, as an advisory body, ICOMOS, have the mandate to contribute to the implementation of the convention. So does the state party. Where does the national committee fit in that world? The national committee national committees need to set up a body of knowledgeable members in World Heritage to provide impartial and credible guidance. And what is the role of Secretariat in helping towards that? And I think that's an important consideration as well in light of some of the challenges that we're going to be facing in the future with nomination proposals and even monitoring exercises. And perhaps there's a need for a policy that requires the involvement of national committees in World Heritage matters in the countries. And this could be focused on matters of accountability, transparency, impartiality, credibility, consistency. You get the gist of the type of qualities we're looking for. But this is really to either help ensure success, so support state party, or flag issues. So support well, either way, it's to support a credible implementation of the convention. And I'll leave it with one last question that stems from the presentations. It is clear to me that the convention, the implementation of the convention and the work of the World Heritage Committee has changed over time, and it was quite eloquently presented at the beginning of the session. And my question is, how are we as an organization going to adapt to that? And perhaps national committees have a role in supporting that adaptation. So I'll leave it with that, and I hope we have a few minutes for conversation.
Thank you very much, Christoph, and thanks to all of our speakers for sharing their really valuable first-hand perspectives. I would now like to ask all the speakers to come up here, and maybe 4 of you to sit over there, and two here on the left side. Unfortunately, we have a little bit less time now than expected, as usual in these kind of events. So we're going to merge the last 2 agenda items, the Q&A session and the panel discussion. And we will now have different rounds of questions. We will start with Teresa, who will pose one of the questions we prepared, and then we will ask the audience here to give us a question, and then also engage the online audience, which you can see there. They have already been posting questions in the chat, and Gabriel has had a look, and which one we're gonna ask here in the room.
So we are trying something different. We are sharing the screen with everyone participating. I would suggest that our Zoom participants also show themselves, but keep yourself muted. You're seeing the ICOMOS who are present, ICOMOS members who are present here, and I can see Sheridan is also in the call in Zoom. Yes.
Yes, perhaps we will try to do one question from our side, and one question from you. Okay. So thank you very much for all your presentations. They were very interesting. I'm sure we will have a lot of questions. I would like to start perhaps a small question to Bettina. Your presentation was really very interesting, gave us a very nice overview. And for us, of course, we are very much interested with all this global approach for the World Heritage List. And you make reference for something interesting that was perhaps that we need to work on capacity building. And I think this perhaps is really something very much necessary, and all national committees feel that. And this perhaps could allow members to understand better the relation of all different phases of the process, but also the relations between culture, nature, the people, and communities. My question is, on this capacity building process, could we introduce also some ideas concerning the tentative list? Today we didn't spoke very much about that, and perhaps could you give us some ideas? How is the process with the tentative list?
Well, I mean, I think capacity building is really the key for the future to improve the way things are done, but also to, if you have a community that is aware of how things function, you have a stronger community also when you're trying to make a point on certain matters. On tentative list, I think that would be really the groundbreaking work, to say we take all these matter one step before even getting to a nomination, and which I think it's something that is being done through the upstream process, where now you have actually experts that already tackle the matter, that you have countries that can request support in identifying whether a site has the potential already to actually go towards a full nomination, which not only saves money, but I think it also saves everything else that can come afterwards, with the angriness of state parties that they feel not understood, but also on an advisory body level. That's really the role of the advisor, to say, let's work together and let's see whether maybe this site is worth for another type of listing. And especially I see IUCN has become more aware also of the fact that maybe by directing certain sites towards another designation, like the Man and Biosphere, you still have good results, because maybe the framework of the site is not the adequate one within World Heritage, but it fits perfectly with the Man and Biosphere program, which still is a UNESCO program, and in many cases there's the same awareness. For ICOMOS, it's a bit more difficult because you don't really have the same typology of list. You can't really say there's another program that could fit or could give you the same, let's say, outcomes also in terms of resources, but the idea would really be to maybe start already at the tentative listing level to bring in expertise, and also maybe within tentative lists to also have ICOMOS doing capacity building to national experts to better understand also how to support certain processes, because I did a couple of interviews in which the stress was on national committees that at time they do the wrong thing, because they say things saying, I am ICOMOS, and therefore I tell you it's a yes or a no, which is something that cannot be done. But I think with capacity building, you can avoid this entire process of going through the anger and get the outcome of more informed people working with you.
Yeah, perhaps to continue on this and relating with what Christophe just presented to us, are the national committees or ICOMOS national committees involved in the process of preparing a tentative list, for instance? Perhaps they could work more on that.
So, as I indicated in my presentation, is the mic on? Yeah? I'm not sure. I'll speak loudly. Really? Yeah, okay. So as I indicated in my presentation, we purposefully did not want to get involved in the tentative list. And I think it's also important to keep that distance in certain circumstances, because for one, there's always a political dimension to preparing these lists. And perhaps that's one thing that we seem to be struggling with in general, is the politics around all of this. And I really appreciated your presentation at the beginning, and you were fairly tame actually in explaining the complexities of this. But I think it's important to for any national committee to first focus on the mandate of the organization as a whole. So one reason why we decided not to get involved in the tentative list is because we are mindful of the entire process, even post-tentative list, and appreciate the need for impartiality. However, we do have a responsibility in implementing the convention as well, and which is why we felt that the most appropriate action was to disseminate the understanding of some of the key concepts, and to offer it broadly to whomever wanted to be a candidate on the tentative list. And in this instance, the state party greatly appreciated our ability to be impartially providing this key information, which doesn't tie the state party to that interpretation, while leaving them the authority to work with the people they needed to develop their nomination, their tentative list.
Yeah, perhaps now we pass to the audience if someone wants to put, please, Ega.
Thank you very much. This is really very informative, so thank you to everybody for providing very earnest and useful information. I have to just point out the sustainable development aspect. I think we haven't really dwelled much on the power balance and how this UN system is an IGO system, and how an expert organization, an NGO like us, what we can expect from such a system of political power dynamics. And it brings us to sustainable development because, one of the biggest ideas there is culture, heritage versus development, or OUV versus big bad projects. And this dialogue that is coming along, it's so crucial. And I'm personally experiencing this myself, like that dialogue, the upstream process and the updated discussions between states, parties, and ICOMOS. It really adds so much more quality to the process. Lastly, the way that the World Heritage Sustainable Development Policy has been brought up, how would ICOMOS ideally engage with that? I think we should maybe think about that a little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, you have one question from your side?
Yes. Okay. There's a lot of, actually there's a lot more comments than questions, but I think I saw one good question first. Is the, I'm multitasking here, but let me just ask. This is from Mohammed Badri. How does the World Heritage Panel, Evaluation Committee, and monitoring missions recognize the marketing strategies of a heritage site? From your point of view, is it good for heritage sites that to be branded or not? I think it's more of a general question for World Heritage Sites. Anyone can probably answer this.
I could explain something related to the evaluation of the nominations. And actually, well, ICOMOS, of course, keeps its professional role. So the marketing strategy, of course, we are aware of it in some cases. But actually, what we assess at the panel meeting is the OUV of the property. So criteria, integrity, authenticity, protection, management. Of course, there are cases where there are some projects, for instance, tourism projects or other kind of development projects that could jeopardize the potential OUV of the property. And that's why there are additional recommendations, even in the case of inscriptions. Even in the case when we agree that the property has OUV, there are sometimes very strong recommendations regarding, let's say, marketing strategies.
Yeah, I'd like to put a question, I don't know, for Alfredo or perhaps Marie-Laure. We'd like to ask about how you organize the selection of the ICOMOS experts for the panel. The experts, are you inviting also, for instance, people, experts from the international scientific committees? How this selection is organized?
Okay, so the selection of the experts is prepared by the evaluation unit. Depending, the selection of experts depends every year on the type of dossier that will be evaluated. If there are many archaeology sites, we will have more archaeologists than if there are more cultural landscape, we will have more landscape people. So a pre-selection is prepared by the Secretariat based on the skills which are required and based also on the geographic balance which is required, because one rule also is that we try to have people from all regions, to send expert missions from the region to missions and so on. And then the final decision is made with the chairs of the World Heritage Panels, who are Toshi Kono and Nancy, a member of ICOMOS Canada. This is, and then of course there are always some adjustments because people in the last minute cannot come or something has happened. So I must say that there are adjustments until the last minute. All the more so, as Alfredo said, it's a very big constraint to make yourself available for 10 days at a very busy period of the year, so sometimes people just can't make it. Maybe I can just add one thing, because Alfredo said that it was entirely free. It was the case at the beginning, and it remained free for Alfredo, because Alfredo was a board member, so ICOMOS board member are not allowed, our statutes forbid to compensate board members for their activities, but now there is a small line in the budget. Of course it's not enough, but we can offer some financial compensation to the experts who are not board members and who come to the panel.
In relation to that, one of the questions from Chilangwa is if for a lot of ICOMOS members, how do you become part of the expert pool? How do you become considered? You know, there's a list, right? So they're asking. Who can answer? I don't know who answers these questions.
Yeah, you, Christoph. Perhaps Alfredo.
No, that's one of the main questions that we receive normally. And well, it's not easy to explain, but I can speak on the basis of our experiences. I think the international scientific committees are an entrance gate to be considered an expert, because really you have to work there in the realm or in the field of your speciality. But I would say, in the basis of our experience, that you become an expert by yourself. You need to study a lot. I think Monica has presented the documents that are received by experts, and I always say you have to put the operational guidelines below your pillow, so that you can receive information even when sleeping. You have to study a lot, you have to listen a lot, that's very important. You have to read a lot, to read the committee decisions, the ICOMOS reports, and to be very open-minded, because you have to read reports from many people from different cultures, and of course experience as well, which doesn't necessarily mean age. But actually, I think there's no only one way to become an expert, but it's very important that members are engaged with international scientific committees, because those are the real scientific discussions within ICOMOS that allow you to become an expert. Thank you.
Yeah, if I can add something, just to say that the desk reviews for us are very important to help us detect potential experts. So if you're asked to write desk review, don't hesitate to do it, and to do it well, because you have to know that it's very risky for ICOMOS to choose a new expert when you don't know how he or she works, because what was not perhaps said enough in the presentations is how tight the calendar is, because the mission takes place in September, October, then the panel takes place in November, then you have to meet the state party to ask for additional information. So everything is extremely tight, and ICOMOS is really compelled to provide the recommendation at the end. So if one piece of the chain is
not to add meetings with the process and so on, but to make the humanity move one step further. And where is that spirit? I would like to see if we can connect the improvement, and where we can connect the improvement of our capacity, which has been demonstrated in a fantastic way. Even that screen of people on the internet is an amazing progress. Although when they will have translation, so that our colleague can allow us to speak in our own language. And how do we connect this with the intellectual development? We just had a General Assembly in Delhi on heritage and democracy. Where is the thematic study on democratic spaces? This could be an example. Maybe there is a connection to have between the improvement of the World Heritage activities in ICOMOS and this huge hole we have with no scientific strategy for the organization. We accumulate activities, but we don't have a vision of the future. So where is that? Is there a way, and I think I'm asking essentially, where is our connection between our professional capacity and our intellectual leadership? in ICOMOS? Is there some idea? Every one of you have presented an aspect of that question, but it would be interesting for the participants.
Dis-nous. Nous sommes à l'Alliance française, mais je ne suis pas sûr si on a le droit de parler français. Je ne sais pas s'il y a la traduction. Donc, je vais te répondre en anglais. D'accord? Okay. No, I think that's a very crucial question you are asking, because actually ICOMOS is especially a professional and an experts organization. And one of ICOMOS' aims, of course, is to produce theory, to produce new concepts, and to be the avant-garde in the realm of conservation, of heritage conservation. But I would say this. On the one hand, there is the World Heritage agenda, especially, which is really very tight. And as was said, I think, by Nicole, even the committee has completely changed, because at the committee sessions there were technical discussions in the past, not now. Now there are only political discussions. But, well, the committee is not, the committee or the meetings related to the implementation of the convention are not perhaps the right place for the intellectual discussion. But at the same time, they are first, the international scientific committees. I think that's why I think that they are so important. But anyway, there are some initiatives that have been taken over the last years, for instance, regarding reconstruction, or the current discussion on sites of memory. Of course, heritage and democracy was the theme of the last General Assembly in 2017. Discussion hasn't been launched so far as I know. But of course, the ICOMOS is always open for discussion, and I think that perhaps this meeting, the scientific symposia or coming General Assemblies are the places to launch new reflections. But I think ICOMOS is working on that. But perhaps the problem is that the World Heritage Agenda is so tight that doesn't leave the time sometimes for a deep and especially long intellectual discussion.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm really sorry, but it will be necessary to stop here because we have a schedule to follow. Before passing the microphone to Toshi, I would like very much to thank you, all of you. It was really very interesting. It's the proof that we should repeat perhaps this panel once more in future. J'aimerais aussi beaucoup remercier l'Alliance française de nous avoir reçus aussi aujourd'hui. C'est vraiment magnifique. Y claro que quería agradecer a ICOMOS Argentina porque nos estão a receber muitíssimo bien. Muchas gracias. And I will give the final word to Toshi, please.
Good morning, bonjour. J'ai pris un cours français à l'Alliance française au Japon, mais permettez-moi de parler en anglais aujourd'hui. Thank you very much for all, and also participants via Zoom. I think this has been a very, very successful event for the World Heritage Session. And I really appreciate people who have actively participated. Just a few things I'd like to add. Related to the discussions. The very important points that Alfred already mentioned. The ICOMOS has a direct interaction with the state parties after evaluation started. And this has been changing the relationship with the state parties. Unfortunately, this period is very, very tight between November and March. But during this period, Secretariat received a lot of emails and Skype calls and receiving additional information, hundreds of pages. But at least there are direct interaction is occurring. And this is, I think, a quite important point. And one more important point is that, let me refer to a concrete example. If members of ICOMOS Italy are here, please do not feel bad. last year we had a quite dramatic experience with an ex-Italian ambassador. In spring, of 1 or 2 members of ICOMOS Italy wrote and spoke about a specific nomination from Italy. And then this was, let's say, referred to by the ex-Italian ambassador that ICOMOS leaked information. Confidentiality was not respected. And since then, during almost 4 months, at every single occasion, ex-ambassador raised this issue and sent letters to all UNESCO member states. So I had to take a floor in Manama that nothing happened, everything is fine, confidentiality was strictly respected, but I was very horrified that this kind of pressure never happened. And so it's a very, very sensitive issue. And also I would like to explain a little bit tomorrow that there's an ad hoc working group of World Heritage Committee. And the mandate of this ad hoc working group this time is to discuss about the modalities of possible use of other institutions besides the 3 advisory bodies. So evaluation process, including upstream process, could be substantially revisited, and eventually operational guideline might be amended. So the world is changing, and please bear this fact in mind. But at the same time, we have to concentrate on our very strictly scientific position, and this is, I think, the strengthen our position. So this said, I'd like to add maybe one more thing to Dino's point. As Fredo mentioned, there's a very crucial issue is reconstruction of destroyed World Heritage cities, and also the site of memories, especially concerning the recent conflicts. And ICOMOS presented a paper, and which was very well received by the World Heritage Committee, so that some nominations were postponed, and the committee requested us, advisory bodies, to contribute to that further. So this will be one important, actually, scientific contributions from ICOMOS. So ICOMOS has been working. Maybe we should better communicate to the members on this point. So this is my last words. Thank you very much again, and please contact us if you have any questions. Thank you.
One small announcement. For those who are interested with the recording, this is being recorded, so if you want to get a copy of that, we will just let us know or send an email to the Secretariat, and they will, we will be able to do that. The next session will be about emerging professionals. It's at 11 o'clock. One thing that I just want to highlight is this is a technology that we can use. Currently, it's with Toshi, who has provided this information, but I hope that in the future that we can have more of these online conversations, so that our capacity as an organization becomes more. You don't have to be in that site, but learn it a little bit. Yeah, thank you very much.